So everybody, by now you guys have all probably heard the news that Tony Ferguson is gonna fight Paddy Pimblett at UFC 296 December 16th, and I think we all think the same thing when this fight was announced. It's kind of weird, kind of coming out of nowhere, and overall just a odd matchup. And I kind of wonder what the UFC matchmakers were thinking in making this fight. Like, I don't know, probably Dana White with his Paddy the Baddy wig is just hoping that Paddy will go out there and finish Tony Ferguson and build up his name again, because we all don't like Paddy at the moment. But I don't know, I think that's kind of disrespectful, because Tony Ferguson, I believe he can get the job done against Paddy the Baddy. I think Paddy isn't as good as he is, and hopefully Tony Ferguson will get one last good show out there for us. But at the same time, he's been going on quite a depressing run lately. He's been losing 6 of his last 6 fights, which is a pretty bad little run to go on. You want to hit people to going on win streaks, not losing streaks. And even worse than that, he's been finished in his 3 last fights, which is just kind of sad. And it's just been a very depressing time to be a Tony Ferguson fan. Like at his last fight in July, he got kind of just a little outclassed, I guess. Time is catching up to him against Bobby Green, and then he got submitted by Bobby Green, which is kind of weird because I never thought Bobby Green would submit everybody, but I guess he submitted him. But the weird thing about that is that how can you get submitted by a Bobby Green, but when Charles Oliveira and Benil Dariush have you in these super tight submissions that it looks like your limb is literally about to pop off, like truly gruesome holds that but anyone in the world would tap, but Tony wouldn't. Like, he's just that guy. He's just that type of toughness. But like, how can you not tap to that, but you tap to like Nate Diaz and Bobby Green? It was quite unfortunate, but yeah, he's just been going on a pretty bad run. And yeah, talking about that Nate Diaz fight, that fight was kind of like last minute, but I'm kind of happy it happened because his other opponent who was lined up to fight him was Li Jiang. I think that's his name. He's the guy who Hamza submitted in the first round next to Dana White. And I think that would have been an even worse matchup for him because he's a much bigger, much stronger welterweight who's much younger than Nate Diaz. Probably would have gotten done much more dirty. But he still lost to Nate Diaz, but just, I mean, it is what it is. I feel like that was just kind of like a whatever kind of fantasy matchup type of thing that we got to see. But yeah, he lost that. That kind of sucked. And then before that, last year, he got brutally KO'd by Michael Chandler, which kind of broke my heart to see because the way he just got kicked and fell to the floor was very gruesome. Like, it was one of those knockouts where you don't know if the guy's going to get up, and he was out for a while. But luckily he got up and everything was okay, but still, you don't want to see people taking shots like that. And it was the first time we've seen Tony Ferguson get knocked out. And then the 2 fights before he fought Chandler was against Benil Dariush and Charles Oliveira, where like I said, he was getting put into these crazy submissions and just being worked. You can see that these guys are the new generation, the new age, and Tony Ferguson is just the time of Leicester year. And it was just kind of sad to see him get outclassed and picked apart and just dragged to the floor by both of these guys. But it is what it is. These guys needed those wins to propel their career. But even before those 2 fights, we had the fight with Justin Gaethje, which I think is the most notorious loss on his record, just because we all know what happened that night. Justin showed up. He was just the stronger, the faster, and the better man that night. He was just, for lack of a better term, bullied Tony that night. Picked him apart, beat his face up, just left him like a shell of himself. He was really never the same after this fight. I mean, he was still I think the best thing he did that night was land a really beautiful uppercut on Justin Gaethje, and I think if he had a little bit more time in the round, he probably could have finished him. But it is what it is. That's how the game is. You gotta take advantage of the time you have, and the better one won that night. But let's talk about Tony before these losses, the man he was before he was known as the guy who just kept losing and losing. Before his loss to Justin, he was seen as the king of the division, the boogeyman of the division. He was on an impressive, outstanding 12-fight winning streak, which I believe no one in the UFC has currently. The only person who probably has it, I believe, is Islam Makhachev, and he's regarded as one of the best fighters in the world. And well, you can see only the top of the top can get that impressive feat. And yeah, he had that, and everyone was saying looking for him to fight with Khabib for the title. And for one reason or another, maybe it was bad luck, maybe it was a cursed fight from the MMA gods, but that fight never materialized, unfortunately, because I think it would have been a fun matchup. Maybe it wouldn't have. Maybe Tony had like a couple fights left before he turned into this version of himself. But nonetheless, I think it would have been a good matchup. I think he could have given him a little bit of trouble. I don't know if he would have beat him or not, because Khabib just has that aura of invincibility. But yeah, it would have been an interesting matchup nonetheless, and unfortunately we didn't get to see it. But while he was on top of the lightweight division, he was absolutely mauling and cutting up all of these top lightweights. He was finishing them too. He went on to sub Edson Barbosa, but like the thing about Edson Barbosa back in the day, he was like very much a big Brazilian killer at the time. You probably have all seen his kick knockouts, which are pretty amazing to see even now. Like, he's still fighting, but he's not as good as he was in his prime. But when he was in that prime, he was that dangerous, scary man, and Tony just got him out of there. He also went on to fight Kevin Lee, which is like, I guess he was a really high fighter back in the day. But then when he ran into Tony Ferguson, he got subbed real quick. And I think that's how Tony won his interim championship, by subbing him, which was pretty impressive too, because some people were thinking that Kevin was too big for him and he would have ragdolled him. But no, he got him out of there. And then, of course, he has some pretty impressive finishes over Anthony Pettis. Anthony Pettis, a previous world champion. And with that type of experience and what Tony did to him, of course, it was pretty cool to see what he did to him. He cut him up, finished him. He also went on to TKO Donald Cerrone, and what he did to his face, he messed him up. I think he closed his eye up really good. And, you know, most people are thinking about Donald Cerrone like he's like a chump nowadays, just because he's been losing a lot and stuff like that. But before he started losing all these fights, he was a pretty top contender. I believe he was a challenger for the title at one point. But yeah, before he started losing, he fought Tony, and Tony messed him up. And I don't know, maybe that sent him down the spiral. But I believe he still had a little bit left in him when he fought Tony, and Tony just messed him up. But yeah, all that to say that Tony used to be that guy, and I hope like a lot of us don't forget all of his accomplishments and accolades, like in light of all these losses. But that brings us to this fight, Paddy the Baddy. I think all of us are in the same consensus that Paddy the Baddy is pretty disliked among all MMA fans. When he came into the UFC, he was kind of a Conor McGregor prototype. He was a European man with a cool accent, with great charisma and great mic skills. So we were all looking forward to his rise up the ranks. And for the first 3 fights he had in the UFC, he was doing pretty good. He was out there being fun, finishing guys, twerking on them, like got that teabagging them, Modern Warfare 2 style and all that stuff. That was exciting and hilarious to see. And then of course he has his patented bowl haircut, which everyone like thinks is absolutely hilarious. And I've even seen like a lot of jokes of him like looking like a peasant from the 16th century or something like that, which I think is hilarious. But yeah, all that to say that he was on top of the world for a little bit. But then about a year ago, in December time, he had a fight against Jared Gordon. And well, we all know what happened that night. He went in there and he was just kind of getting pieced up. I feel like every single shot that Jared Gordon threw, it was hitting Paddy. He didn't like have that much good defense. And even in the ground, like I don't think he did anything impressive there. And the majority of the MMA world thought that Jared Gordon won that fight. So when it was time for the decision to be announced and it was in the favor of Paddy the Baddy, we were all like, what the? Because we all thought this was a big robbery. And maybe if Paddy the Baddy acted a little humbly there, we'd have all not given him that much of flack. But no, he decided to parade around acting like he won that fight and basically questioning the judges for not giving him a full sweep. And I believe to this day he still doesn't acknowledge the fact that he lost that fight. And I believe that night he went on to lose so many of his fans, if not all of them. I don't think I see anybody excited to see Paddy the Baddy fight. But I think we're all pretty much excited to see Tony fight him. Because I think like what the title of the video says, I believe Tony Ferguson can redeem himself. If he goes in there, ankle picks Paddy the Baddy, and gets him out of there, or at least just beats him, does some crazy stuff, spinning elbows, cuts his face up. I don't know, it'd be kind of funny to see him throw a spinning elbow and just like cut off his hair or something like that. It just jokes, but yeah, I believe if Tony Ferguson can go in there, shut down this hype train once and for all sins will be forgotten. We will all forget those 6 losses. He will be once again the undisputed king at lightweight, and he can retire in peace. So yeah, December 16th, it's Tony time.